you so much. Thank you for inviting me. And I will be a bit apologetic at the beginning. I'm not going to teach you skyrocketing science today, because some of you knows better about the processes in the soil and in the water much better than I do. Then I will try to give you a perspective of what an organization and a chief scientist is doing as regard to a nature reserve, especially as famous as the Hula. I cannot compete with that. Rotem gave us a lecture about a zillion years ago, and with all kind of processes and equations, and she killed us. So that's why I decided not to talk about science today, because she's going to embarrass me, as she always does. But I will first tell you about the organization, then about my job, and what we're doing with this wonderful place that is called Shmurat Hula, or the Hula Reserve. The Israel Nature and Park Authority, we are the sole governmental organization that is responsible for nature. We have the Ministry of Environment responsible for the environment. We have NGOs which are dealing with nature, but governmental organizations that is responsible for the nature in Israel, there is only one. And by law, there is an order by the law to nominate a chief scientist. There should be an ecologist, and for the last 15 years or so, it's me. Too many years, but that's a fact. As compared to governmental offices, a chief scientist there is getting funds, and he is giving money and trying to direct research. As my funds are minimal and my responsibility is maximal, I'm not doing that, because they don't have that much of so much funds. But what I'm responsible for is to have proper management and proper taking care of the nature assets that we have and that we are responsible for. I have to take all the best of me and my staff. I have huge staff. I have to take the best available knowledge and making sure that we are doing the best out of it. And when the knowledge is lacking, we are ordering research, etc. But research is a minor part of the duties. Mostly is taking research that already been done and translating it into a policy, and then advise the organization what kind of actions that we should do. Dana, for example, and Rotem before she left us, shame on you, they were responsible, they were part of the team that should give the organization advice. But personally, I can touch everything because I was nominated by law, okay? I have a legal position, and I can do anything I want, and this is a lot of fun, believe me. I'm going quickly to the next slide. Most of our staff is of ecologists. Rotem was a bit weird person in the staff, because she was dealing with geochemistry and other stuff that I don't understand until today. But we have ecologists, and we have to give advice to situations that are happening right now. We have some time to analyze data that already is there, and we don't have enough time to do research, and we have to give advice anyhow. So we have an equation, and the main part of our equation is variance, spatial and a temporal variation, and that's a big chunk of the data that we have. And still we have to make decisions and advise decisions. Yes, we are making mistakes because of that, but we have to give advice to the organization right now, and that's what we do. And the mission is really not simple. Let's try to understand what the mission is. I'm not trying to let you guess, especially it will be difficult with the Zoom, but I'm going to phrase it like that. He's protecting Israel's plants and animals, mostly. We are not dealing with microbes, for example, or almost do not deal with microbes every now and then, but plants and animals in functional or in functioning ecosystems within natural landscapes. These are nice words, believe me. It's very nice to put it on the wall. That's what the science department is doing. But how we're going to do that? Before I'm going deep into the Hula Valley, I will give you some general idea of our concept. The main thing that you have to do in order to do nature conservation is to have area. Because if you don't have place to put that the animals and plants are there, you cannot go anywhere. Of course, it's not enough. Because let's say we have a reserve from Tel Aviv to the Hermon, and you are protecting half of the country, it will be a lousy conservation because we are neglecting the Negev or the desert, and we are neglecting the sea, etc. So the reserves have to represent the different ecosystems that we have. They have to be large, because if you don't have large areas, wide, large areas, you cannot keep functioning ecosystems. It doesn't work. We need a lot of area. And it has to be connected. Even though I made my career off of the connectivity, I'm not going to talk about it today because we are dealing with one reserve. I will talk by the end of the talk. I will give something about connectivity, but not much. Let's put it aside. But under this umbrella, most of the plants and animals, we keep them. Okay, they will be protected. Yet, usually, we're failing. Why? Because we don't have enough large areas, enough representation, and enough connectivity. So this is why we are dealing with species. And that's where you are, hear about us in the news. The ranger went there to protect the vulture and go down with the snapling to take up an ibex. But this is the big issue. Nobody is listening about that. Nobody hear about that. It doesn't. This is the all kind of communities that are taking care inside the small and smoky rooms, and nobody hears about that. That's the important part. Keep the land wide, representative, big, but all the noise is here. We have endangered species that we are taking care of. We have invasive species that we want to eradicate, and we have overabundant species that we are giving them trash to eat, and the population is growing, and they're making a lot of trouble to other species. For example, jackals, wild boars, ravens, etc. This is true for both sea and land, and aquatic. Sorry, I will not forget that in this audience. And the point is that we are protecting nature from one major source, and the major source is us. Because even though we are so green and we like nature, and nobody is living on a tree, and we want houses and we want roads, and we want to go from one place to another, and we want land, and we need to eat, so we have plenty of land for agriculture, and this is all on the expense of nature. So this is all of us. Each of us is biting a bit, and as the population of Israel is growing by 2% a year, which is about 1.9, 2% a year, since Israel was created. It doesn't change. 1.8 to 2.1% a year, very steady. The country that grows most in the Western world. Now today, let's define Western after Ukraine. Let's forget politics. But we are growing very fast. The world did this jump from after the Black Plague till today. They jump about tenfold in 400 to 500 years. We did that in 150 years of Zionism. We won. So we are under a lot of pressure because of development. So what I'm going to talk about today, from now on, I'm going to talk mostly about the Hula and the Hula Valley. at last, after this long introduction. I will give you some history that you probably know most of it, some biological facts, how to manage a reserve very briefly. I'm not going to go deep into details. I will talk a bit about the agmon. The reserve is, we have, again, by law, we have to keep it. And then there is an agmon, another area that was reflooded about 25 years ago, give or less. I'm going to talk about the cranes that you probably heard in the last by December and January about the plague that we have there, the flu. And most importantly, I'm going to talk 5 minutes by the end about the regional perspective, which I think this is the most important part for me. Some data. The Hula lake was, before it was drained, was about 15 square kilometers. The swamp was about 45 square kilometers. This is a huge area, 60 square kilometers. Okay, that's big in Israeli terms, not globally. The biology there was wonderful. It was a hotspot for mammals, birds, fish, amphibians, reptiles, invertebrates, and plants, all the major classes. So why it is so special? Let's start with the biogeography of Israel. You see, Israel is the meeting point of 4 major global bioregions: the Mediterranean in the dark yellow, whatever you want to call it, the Iran-Turanian. Oh, it is going to Turkey, Greece, Rome, and which is very much influenced by that part of the world. The other bioregion is the Irano-Turanian, which is extending from Iran through the Asara Pore. How do you say Asara? Yes, to Israel, it ends here. And then we have the Sahara Arabian, which is coming from Northern Africa to Israel, Sinai, Israel, and going back into Saudi Arabia. And then you have the fourth bioregion, that the Sudanic or the Ethiopian. Everybody wants to call it different names. And when you're in Shkedy, you see an area that looks exactly like tropical Africa. Now, if you take your helicopters that all of you have, you take off in Shkedy, you are going very quickly around 1, 2, 3, 4 bioregions, just like that. And you land in Nahal Sorek, which is west of Jerusalem, in the one of the densest vegetation places in Israel. You cross an area with almost no vegetation at all, and in 20 minutes you're there. It doesn't happen in many places in the world. Israel is really very unique, and it is unique even culturally, because as you can see, most of the main powers of the world just met here. And it's not just a coincidence. Israel have roots from everywhere, from Alexander the Great, Nebuchadnezzar, Pharaoh, Queen of Sheba, that came to have some fun with King Solomon. They all met here. I'm not going to talk about culture. So the Hula Valley is just there, just north of the Sea of Galilee. And you probably know that the Rift Valley, all of the Rift Valley that goes from Turkey to Africa, the deep south, we are migratory. It is a migratory route for birds. We have about half a billion birds going south and north each year. You have records for that even in the Bible. After the talk, it's very interesting, and they're all concentrated here in Israel, and the Hula Valley is a hub. Everything is coming and going from the Hula Valley. So Israel is a meeting point of bioregions. It's a migratory route, and the habitat was very diverse. We have a lake, we have a swamp, we have rivers coming in, the Jordan River and others. We have floods coming in, and we have dry lands. Some of the area is quite dry. We have mountains on the sides. It is a paradise, biological paradise. So why was it drained? The legends are saying that it was drained because of malaria. That's a very nice audience. Otherwise, I would say bullshit. Well, I'm not going to say that. Malaria was not in Israel anymore because of the spread DDT. And very small things to do. So it was not drained because of malaria. Then they say, wow, we want 6 square kilometers for agriculture. And the talk there, the Zionist talk there was, we'll have peat that we are going to have agriculture on, and the peat will be Zionist. The same things that people from Russia said at that time about the land of the kolkhoz, which is going to be very much Sovietic and grow everything. It didn't work. But again, to have superiority over nature. My parents, they came to Israel after the Holocaust. They came here in 1947. They were talking about drying up the Hula as the most important. That, wow, they felt great because they came from the Gola, from the diaspora, and suddenly they feel that they are here. They're creating a new culture. And of course, to better control the water levels, and because it has a lot of influence on the Sea of Galilee, and everybody understood that we have to do something, otherwise the lake will be contaminated. For all the wrong reasons, they did that. They didn't have to do any of that. That was a mistake, but it was done. I'm not an historian, so I'm dealing now with what I have, and I cannot change the past, even though sometimes I want to do that very much. This is the map of, doesn't look that good. This is the map of the lake and the swamp, 1869. Today, the reserve is approximately here. Okay, nice picture. And then they drained the Hula. They did mostly, they said they're doing it by men labor because they want to show that the people of the Zionists can do and work with the muscles. Of course, they did that because the bulldozers that were put there, they just cracked. So they had to do things manually, otherwise it won't work. And not all of it, but some of it. It was spread over 7 years, 4 years more than planned. Israel, isn't it? 4 years more than planned, not that bad, just double the time. Then came Heinrich Mendelssohn, a very famous professor from Tel Aviv University, and he created the first green movement in Israel. But his aide was a professor. Then he was a very young student. Later, he became very famous Professor Amod Zehavi. He was the major power on this green movement, and they created a reservat. What is a reservat? It is a reserve, but by then, everybody talked German, like Mendelssohn, and they call it reservat. The name Shmura did not exist then. And okay, so we have a reservat, and this is how they drained the Hula Valley looked. This is of Peter Meromi, Shirat HaAgam HaGovea. I don't know how to translate it. The poetry of the dying lake or something like that. Very famous photographer and book. And this is a reserve. So here we have the reserve. The entrance to the reserve, those of you who have been there, is from here. And this is the reserve that look very funny. About 4,000 dunams. Why is it 4,000 dunams or 4 square kilometers? They came to Amod Zehavi, they asked him, how much do you need for the reserve? He said, 4 square kilometers. They say, you have to give a reason. He scratched his head and said, that's the area that the wild-tailed eagle needs for survival. The white-tailed eagle, the last female that exists in Israel, just died 2 months ago. You had a beautiful piece in the Arutz time in the Channel 12 about the. You have to see that just because of the people that are involved. Anyhow, and that was the science by then. And he asked Amod Zehavi, And he said, until today, that's what you have to do. Just give them numbers. They will take it. We cannot do that anymore, the late Amos Zahavi, I respect him a lot. And this is the reserve. Now, what about the reserve? The decision was to rehabilitate a swamp, but the area was formerly a lake. The infrastructure cannot do that. Just you have the bedrock is not adequate for a swamp. Then the water is maintained by dikes, nature reserve, nature. Yeah, you build dikes, you close an area. Now, because all the soil just dropped because the peat dried out, and you have to keep it up, so you have to pump water in. This is nature. When you have to pump water into the reserve, it doesn't go gravitationally because the gravitation is too low. I have to keep it by dikes. This is a natural place. Yes, that's what we're dealing with. I'm not going to argue with the past. We had awful water quality, sewage coming from Kiryat Shmone, and leftovers from fish ponds. That's what we had by then. And of course, nobody talked about maintenance. You build dikes in order to keep water. The dikes are falling all the time. This week, we are dealing with a dike that just collapsing in the Hula Valley, and we have to fix it. We are doing that. But by then, nobody thought about maintenance, and that's how the reserve looked. But yet, the wildlife was a major success. Look like that. Look how beautiful it is. Somebody is coming here and or see the storks are in the water, and pelicans floating here. It's a quite recent picture, and this is a new water body that we built in the last 5 years or so. So we're adding water bodies, and the common ones that we have here. And I'm not reading the chat, so others will do that. And the okay, and the fallow deer that we reintroduced to the area, and the buffaloes that we have there, and we have visitors, and we have a visitor center that we have some old kind of magics that people are seeing, kind of 3D things. I don't understand that. I will never understand that, but it's fun. It's fun. What did we do? First, we increased water quality, water quantity. So if we started, I believe the number is by 3 million cubic meters a year. We are now about 10 million cubic meters a year. What are the numbers, Rotem? Sorry?
It was less than 2 when I was doing the research.
It was less than 2, and now it is about, but now it's about 10, I know that.
Sorry, which water increase? The lake capacity, the output?
The input, just the input. No, just the input. Now, the water quality changed dramatically. If then we got sewage, today we're getting drinking water. This is the best water in Israel, coming from the Dan, the Banyas. They're going there to the valley, the best water. The sewage and the fish ponds are treating elsewhere. So suddenly we have something quite new. The trajectory of the water is, we control it. Natural? No, it's not. It is natural because we have to do that, because we have dikes. We have to make sure that the water will go, and we have to make sure that the water will flow. And Rotem and the masters just told us that we are doing wrong things because the water quality just dropped. And this is not just for the reserves, and then the output that is going to the Sea of Galilee is awful. So the entire system so we changed everything, and we control everything. Natural? It's a very good question. Most of the dikes since then was rebuilt, maintained. We had millions of shekels that we are investing in nature in order to keep the dikes all the time. And we have to keep the dikes because the water level is much higher than the valley. So it has to be pumped in, and we have to keep it with dikes, otherwise there is no reserve. And of course, it influencing quite nicely on the Sea of Galilee, because the water quality that is going, the outflow is good. And we added water bodies to reserves, so we can absorb more water, we have more habitats, we have more diversity, we have more species, we have a better reserve all the time. That's how it looks when we add a water body. It looks exactly like when we drained it, okay? But here we are doing the opposite. We are taking a piece of land that is part of the reserves that was not developed. We are taking with the bulldozers all the things out, and then we are, if we need, we build dikes. Usually we don't do that. We plan it in a way that the water will go gravitationally, but we are building new water bodies. But we also have problems. This species, for example, it's a very famous one. Okay, it's a very famous one. It's called the Cyprus papyrus, or Gomea papyrus, a very well-known species. It is a habitat for many. It used to be a habitat for many species that nest there, that grew there. So it was, one of the wonders of the Hula Reserve, and suddenly it disappeared. And we studied why was it disappearing, and Iggy Liteo from Tel Chai, he did the study for us, and he found that the species needs nitrogen. Now the source of the nitrogen was the sewage and the fish ponds water. So what are we going to do? We are losing species. Are we going to add sewage to the Hula Valley? Now I'm laughing. We are really considering it, or creating a small area within the reserve to absorb more nitrogen and so on. We decided not to do that, and we decided that if we want the reserve that will rely on fresh water, on clean water, so it has a price to pay. And one of the prices that we are paying is the Gomea papyrus, the papyrus, and we are getting plenty of criticism because of that. Uzi Paz, he was, the cornerstone of the nature conservation in Israel. I don't have even not one conversation with him that doesn't add, and what are you doing with this? I'm not doing anything. This is a reserve, we have to accept it. And he doesn't accept it, but he's retired and I'm not, and I'm making the decision. So I will be replaced, and then maybe the decision will be changed. But this is only one example of the problems that we have. When you have a reserve that is artificial, it's natural and artificial at the same time. If you have to keep dikes and you have to manage, and you're controlling the water level, okay? And if you have a new body of waters somewhere, and we said, okay, the level of water will be this high. This high means that if birds want to nest there on the slope, this will be the place that they can nest. But what about the birds that needs to build the nest lower than that? So if we keep it here high, we are losing other species, and it's all the time like that. There is no free meal. When you're doing active management, and we are managing the place, when you do one act for one species, it is against another species, always. And believe me, there are always people that this species that you are not protecting is the baby. There are always people like that. And you're neglecting the papyrus, you are neglecting this, you're neglecting that. Yes, we are neglecting, because we're trying to do the best for as many people, as many species as possible. Also as many people as possible, because of the criticism is killing us. But we have to deal with that all the time. We have to play with that. And we are making a lot of decisions about water levels in each water body in order to trying to keep the habitat diverse enough for most of the species, and we are not always successful. Sometimes we are not successful because we took the things into consideration and say, well, we're going to give up here, as we did with the papyrus. And sometimes it's just an outcome of what we're doing, and we didn't expect that. We like to think of ourselves as a Superman and trying to that we know everything in advance, but we're not. We are making mistakes all the time, or we have surprises all the time. Sometimes there are mistakes, sometimes they're not. And we have other problems. We have the catfish, which is an awful fish. It's a huge one, and they're preying on everything. And we said we have to decimate it and to keep the numbers low, etc. First, we cannot do that, even though we tried. And second, we are not sure today that the decisions that I took about 10 years ago, trying to decimate or lower the number of the catfish, was a good idea. So now we are all the time thinking about that. Today, we're not doing anything against the species. It's an amazing species. This is a fish that can move on a dry land from one body of water to the next. I don't know how the fish that can crawl. It's amazing. The other one is the nutria, which is an American species that invaded Israel. They brought it here to grow it up in some places that will for its fur. Of course, they escaped to nature, and the rest is history. We don't know how to do that. We will find someday. We'll find kind of a genetic trip in order to prevent its reproduction, but I'm not sure if we're going to succeed with that. But we never give up. That's what's nice about the conservationists. We never give up. We don't say, no, we're not going to do that. We put it on the shelf for better times, except myself, when I'm saying we're not going to do that, that's an X. We cannot have all the programs all the time. Sometimes we have to say we failed. We are not doing that. We are going to the next step. But the reserve is only part of the valley, and the government decided to reflood some of the area that is called today Agmon. It was to improve the water quality. It was to better use the unfertile lands, the peatlands. It was to correct some wrongdoings in the past. And funny enough, my organization, I was not part of the organization then, thank God, decided not to be part of the ceremony. I don't understand why. I think this is mostly because of arrogance and stupidity, but I cannot say something like that on my organization. So they had good reasons that I don't understand why, but it's amazing. These are the peatlands. It's an awful picture that is burning in the Hula Valley. You know, the area is burning under the ground because of all the peat there. It is producing methane, and it is in flame, and suddenly the flame burst. But every year, a lot of the Hula Valley is burning. Why? Because of the peat. The peat doesn't know to behave nicely. It's not a Zionist peat. And that's how the Hula Valley looked in the 51 before they started to drain it. This is the reserve, let's say in 58. Look how much of the area was flooded. And this is the Agmon. It's not that big. Everybody's talking about it, but it is not that big. It is relatively small, north of the reserve. But look at all the canals that are connecting everything here, and the canals are well maintained, and the water is being pumped from one place to another. These are the Jordan River, are the western and the eastern canal that are bringing the water from the north. Only from the Hula to the south, it is a river again, but until the Hula Valley, it's not a river. There are canals that are taking water from the north-south. The Agmon was an immediate success. And of course, my organization, everybody ate their hats, because when they saw the success, they say, why we're not there? That should be a nature reserve. And we have plenty of bird species in the lake and in the swamp that was there. And the valley is until today very rich with species. But we have tens of thousands of cranes. I will show you a picture in a minute, flooding the valley. and they cause major damages to agriculture. And the farmers complained about losing their lands and then losing the crops. And so not only that we gave the land for these crazy people that are reflooding and converting upside down Zionism things, now we have to lose money because of that. But it was beautiful. Look at the scenery from the Agmon and all the birds which are coming there. If there is somebody that never saw it, not this year because of the avian flu, but next year, if somebody here was not there during the migrating season, you should. And if you're a student and you're here only for a visit, come next year in this season to see it, because it's really wonderful. Full of birds. Here are ducks and the cranes which are making a show here. And of course, everybody's forgetting that every action has a reaction. You have to pay prices, but everybody was looking for the famous win-win solution. We say, wow, we are going to give the cranes food, tons of grain, of corn grains in one place. The cranes will come there and they will leave the agriculture aside and everybody will be happy. And indeed, the damage to the agriculture decreased, not as much as everybody assumed, but the cranes changed their biology. Suddenly, they congregated, all of them, in the Hula Valley. They didn't continue to Africa, or they do not continue to, only some of them are continue to Africa, some of them just stayed in Israel in huge numbers. And tens of thousands are wintering in the valley. For example, look at this graph. These are the numbers of cranes. These are the total number. These are those which are wintering in Israel. Look how the numbers increase, about 40,000 cranes in the Hula Valley. 40,000. And of course, everybody is coming to see that. I'm coming to. It's a wonderful scene. Really wonderful, and the noise is it's amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah, some of us that like biology, Rotem. Looking backwards, the flu of the avian flu or any other flu, when you have a congregation of 40,000 animals on the same spot, is unavoidable. You know, you cannot. It's just sending your kids to a class with people that have they will not get influenza, they will not get corona. Of course, they're all in one place. One has to be sick, and it spreads. We oppose the feeding. We said it's not good, and the feeding is not good, and it will cause problem in the future. We said we had all the right prophecy, but we not say no, stop it. There is a limit to our power because it's a win-win situation, and the tourism and the agriculture, and so many people around us, and we did not have the power to say no. And today we are regretting it. Did I say that we make mistakes? But by then we didn't know this is a mistake. Today everybody understands it was a mistake, and of course it's our fault because we let it happen. 8,000 cranes died in this year in the Hula Valley. Right now we stopped the feeding. We are thinking about stopping the feeding altogether. We have still a debate with the Keren Kayemet Israel that makes money from all the events around it, with the local authorities, Moatza Azorit, and the farmers, etc. But this is the decision right now. Look how it looks. The cranes are some of them are standing, and say how many are lying down there dead. Now I'm going to talk about the important part. That's why I came from this one. I like to see the Hula Valley in a more regional point of view. In the Hula Valley, here, my perspective, and not only mine, of course, is a hub, is a hydrological hub. We have springs in the north, the Hula Valley, and the Kinneret. Let's see how it's going to work. If I'm taking this part and I blow it up, I hope it looks better should look better. I'm sorry about that. But we have the Banyas, the Dan, and Snir, the three major water sources, the bigger springs in Israel, and the water is there. The water authority and everybody wants to take the water from the source, of course, because then they don't. It's very relatively high, topographically high. They can take the water to agriculture and not pay energy for pumping it up. But of course we refuse, because we want the water to go in a natural way as much as possible to keep nature alive along the route, and to free all the uptakes. More than that, if you're looking here, you see the blue dots here and some blue dots here. There are springs. We call them Mayanot Adofin. I don't know how to translate it to English, so I'm not going to translate it, but it is on the sides of the hills that are going down to the Hula Valley. And we have so many springs here that are, most of them are being taken from the source. We want to free all these water sources altogether. And the water, I'm missing something here, okay. So the vision is that all these water sources will be released from people that take them, will go to the Jordan River or to the canals, and they will flow. Some of them will flow directly to the Sea of Galilee. Some of them are going to flow to the Hula Valley and be accumulated there in the reservoirs. And the water will be collected during the winter, and during the summer, the water will be managed, because we don't have nothing against agriculture. Agriculture needs water, so they need it in the summer. In the winter, usually they have enough rain, so the water will be managed from here. We want it for tourism. We have nothing against tourism. I will show you how we are going to do that. We have plenty of drainage problems in the area, because the valley is flooded. In good years, the valley is flooded, so the Rashut Nikuz, the drainage authority, has to pay a compensation of millions sometimes, because people are complaining that their crops are damaged. And of course for nature. That's why I'm here. So the idea is that we'll build, see, this is the reserve, this is the Agamon, and the idea is that the government, and I think we have the money for that, will pay the farmers that are having fields in this area, so they will neglect their lands. We will build 3 big reservoirs here in order to collect the water which are coming from the north, and we will manage the water from here. Now, more than that, this is how this is a blow up of this area, and as you can see, we have trails and habitats, and of course tourism. We're trying to think about everybody, not to leave anybody aside, because if you leave somebody aside, they're going to kick you. And more than that, I'm sure that you know that the water authority now is building a big pipe that will take desalinated water from the west to the east. Instead of the Movila Artzi, the national plan for moving water from the Sea of Galilee to the south, now we're going to do the other way around. We're going to have it from the desalinated water to the Sea of Galilee, and from there to the Jordan Kingdom, because we signed an agreement with the Jordanian Kingdom in the peace agreement that we are going to give them water. I think 100 million cubic meters a year from the Sea of Galilee. And there is a problem of salination of the Sea of Galilee. I'm not going into details about that, because I'm going to say nonsense, and I'm afraid to do that. So the water is going from here, and we are thinking that in one way or another, or not thinking, the plan is in one way or another to jump the water before they're going down from here to Hula Valley in dry years. So all the system even in dry years will be with no problems. It is not that easy. And another idea is to pump the water from the Sea of Galilee to the Hula Valley in dry years in order to release all the system from all these things that were all the water catches that we have along the way. So all the water will be freed in the Hula Valley, collected here, and maintained. Is it going to happen? Yes, because I'm optimistic. It's tough. The Water Authority is with us. Some organizations that do not like that. Mekorot doesn't like it because they want to do the project, and I have fights with the Water Authority, and we are trying to convince the Keren Kayemet Israel, the JNF. It's not easy. This is a huge political issue with the local governments, etc. But it will be done. So what I wanted to tell you that the Hula Valley is a lab for nature conservation. It is a jewel in the crown, biologically. Yet the landscape is artificial. So we are keeping nature in artificial setup. We have to control many aspects of the management. But you have to understand that every action has a negative reaction, and we have to take it all the time and considering and changing the management. We are changing the management all the time because of the lessons that we are learning. It's a tremendous responsibility because the Hula is well known, it's part of Ramsar Convention, so it is well known around the world. Bird watchers from all around are coming to see birds in Israel. We have criticism all the time. It's good, we like it sometimes. And when the outline is a success, we have things are happening, we are in the seventh sky, but sometimes it doesn't. So in that times we feel a bit different. And I thank you very much for your listening. Thank you. Questions? Thanks. Let me just, I want to stop sharing. Is it shared already?
Yeah, now we see your
Is it shared?
presentation.
Okay. Is it
You
shared
can
now?
stop sharing. No,
Yes, stop
yeah,
sharing.
now we are sharing.
Good,
Yes.
excellent. Oh, what an audience, much bigger than I thought.
Yes.
And thank you guys in the Zoom for being so many. Questions?
What is the goal of the management? So you're taking many actions, right? You're thinking to throw some of the fish, you want to irrigate the land when it's dry. So what is the goal?
The question, I will repeat the question for the people in Zoom. The question is, what are the goals of the management? Well, I didn't go into that because the goals are quite wide. Because we have goals considering every class of animals and plants. So we have goals in order to keep these species here and these species out of here to remove this one. So that's one goal. The other goal is, as I said, to keep, starting in the vision, to have a diverse habitat that will keep the plants and animals that belong to Israel in a functioning ecosystem. That's the goal. So our goal is to make the water levels in a way that will keep most of the species. Our goal is to get rid of invasive species. Our goal is to protect endangered species. Our goal is to decimate or at least to control outbreaking populations. So I cannot give you one goal. The goal is not about water. The water is means in order to keep the biology working. I hope I can you just of course, nature conservation the question is how am I, if I understand well the question, how am I dealing with the conflict of interest between agriculture and nature conservation? This is my job. This is what I'm doing every day, not only with agriculture, with industry, with development, with transportation. We are in conflict of interest anywhere because we are not responsible only for the reserves. We are responsible for all the protected animals and plants in Israel. Some of them are in the reserve, some of them are out of the reserve. So we are in conflict of interest with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ministry of Environment, with the Ministry of Interior, with the IDF and the entire defense department. We are in conflict with everybody. That's what makes our job so interesting. But it's not always fun. But there is an interest of a conflict of interest all the time. If I want a parcel of land, if the farmers want the same part of land, we are in conflict and we have to solve it. I will give you an example from completely different area along the Rift Valley in the Arava. There was an area called Kol America. Never mind why it was called like that. And the Minister for Agriculture said, look, according to the regional plan, it is an agricultural land. It was named agricultural land because there was no other definition. It was by default. But then they want to take it and cut all the acacia trees, not in order to work on the land, but in order to put greenhouses on that because the area was flat. So let's cut everything, take all the everything out, trees, plants, etc., in order to have agriculture. And we objected because even though in other plan it should be a nature reserve, there is a conflict of interest. So we gave up some area that was already declared nature reserve in order to keep this area because we thought it will be more important. So we are dealing with conflict of interest all the time because otherwise you don't need nature conservation. I showed you the graph of human growth. We are growing by 2% a year. This is more food, more housing, more transportation, more and more and more, and we all want to live in bigger apartments than our parents. At least I do. I'm not succeeding, but so we have that's nature conservation. Yes.
You said in the beginning the 60 square kilometers of agriculture is not a good excuse, but why is it a good excuse? It's the only flat valley, the only place 100 years ago we had fresh water all the summer through the year, and the agriculture is still there on the parts we drive the swamp. So why isn't it a good excuse? We gave you back 4 kilometers. Okay, 55 also.
The question was to the Zoom listener, why am I saying that it was a bad decision to dry up the Hula Valley? Because the agriculture there got about 60 square kilometers minus the 5 kilometers that was, thank you, given to us by the government. Well, this is a very interesting issue. So what are our goals? What do we like to keep here? What do we like to conserve here? What kind of traditions that we want here? And by then, in the 50s, agriculture was the Zionist dream. Okay, and by then it was considered to be a very smart move in order to have agriculture. And you're right, we still have agriculture until today, yet it's not that successful, but leave it aside. Let's say it is successful. Now the question is values. What do you prefer? Do you want to keep the heritage of your country that is described by the species that are living there, by the plants that are living there, by animals, and if you if you go, I told you that you can go to the Bible. If you're going to the Bible, I'm not a religious person, absolutely not. But if you look at the book of Job and you read the last chapters there, and when God is explaining to Job why he had to suffer everything, he's just telling him, you don't understand. Look what things I was doing. And all the examples he's giving, all the examples are from nature. Because, and now we can destroy just because we want agriculture without thinking. I think that we could find better places and better planning for that. I'm not saying that
Not in the 1950s.
I think even in the 50s, you could do better, much better than that. And you can invest in order to develop agricultural lands in other places. You could do that using the same water directly and differently. Do you understand how much it was invested there in order to dry out? They didn't have to do that. I'm not sure that there were no other solutions. There are so many books about that. I'm not going to go into details because I'm not an historian. And I said I'm not going to go into history, but there were better solutions that people did not even appreciate by then because nobody understood what Amot Zehavi and Mendelssohn was talking about. For some birds, reptiles, animals, frogs, you're going to. I remember once I met with the Rosh Motzah Ezorit, the head of the regional in Engedi. He's almost in jail now because of some wrong things that he did. And he told me, are you going to stop agriculture and development because you want to keep some lizards? And I told him, yes. And he said, you're crazy. And I said, well, thank you, but that's what I want to do. He's going to jail. I'm still standing here, and I still think I was right because in order to keep our nature alive, we have to weigh things. Now, I'm not running the country. Most of the farmers are saying thank God for that, but we are not as advanced as other countries in order to consider that. I will give you an example. In Holland, in the Netherlands, the head of the Dutch Rashut HaTeva v'Haganim, the Dutch nature protection, he can invite himself to every government meeting that is dealing with things that have an impact on nature. Why is it happening? Because the citizens of the Netherlands understand that if they are not going to do that, they are going to be left with nothing. Now he's doing that on top of the Minister for Environment. He's not replacing him. He's not voting, but he can invite himself to every meeting like that because, and this is because of the people of the Netherlands understand that they need it, and they're doing it. And I guess it's a good idea for Israel as well. I'm proposing it. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. So we have another meeting. More questions, maybe from the Zoom? Yes, Rotem.
You talk always about what you want to achieve, but some of it comes from, as you know, in my opinion, but I would like to elaborate on that. With most of the changes that you make, like you showed in the Hula, you create the habitat, like in that example, and then the soil and the water, all of that has to come into consideration.
Raise up your voice, please.
How do you take into consideration the soil and the water quality? How do you decide on what to put in that location that you want to?
Rotem was asking, I know what your question is, Rotem was asking how am I dealing with questions of water quality and soil quality in order to make decisions for the reserve, which is quite critical. The answer is that we don't have, as you know, personnel that is dealing with that. We don't have geochemists, and we have hydrologists, but we don't have a geochemist. And on that, we have to depend on outsourcing. But this is quite a gap in our knowledge and understanding. And if my plans to increase my department will succeed, this will be one option. And yes, Vulcani people, I'm going to offer her the job. That's what she meant that.
No, because sitting here and most of the people here are dealing with those questions. Most of the people here, obviously, are dealing with those kinds of questions. So I thought, there's a place for us to support some of this. It would be interesting to know how you deal with it, so we can do that.
But you know the answer to that. When we have a problem, and since we don't have the internal personnel to deal with that, we ask the help of the academic world. Sometimes we're working a lot with the Machona Geologi, the Geological Institute, survey, a lot. We are working with them. We are working with other members in other universities, some for the Vulcani, some of the Sheva, some in the north, but not many. But we need help, and we are asking for help. We don't know everything, even though we like to think on ourselves that we know everything. But we need help. But we don't have a personnel that will do that, and I think we should.
You're already almost 10 minutes after 12,
so sorry for taking so much of your time.
that was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.